declined dramatically in many Western European countries as well. In France and the Netherlands, they have disappeared almost entirely from the political scene. Even in former social democratic strongholds, such as Germany and Scandinavia, the left's vote shares saw a striking drop in the 21st century. By the mid-2010s, the share of votes for social democratic and socialist parties in Western Europe was at its lowest in 70 years. And the situation closely resembled that of post-communist Europe. As left-wing parties declined, the populist right came to power. Figure I.1, which can be found in the print and ebook versions of this book. Meanwhile, over the past 2 decades, right-wing populist parties made important inroads across Italy, Germany, Spain, Sweden, and Belgium, and have dominated the polls in countries such as France and the United Kingdom. The number of Europeans voting for populist parties in national elections has surged from an average of 7% in 1998 to more than 25% in 2018. In the 2019 European Parliament election, the populist right received 161 seats, 23%, compared to 118, 17%, back in 2014. Given the region-wide nature of this phenomenon, rather than theorizing post-communist polities as a unique post-communist anomaly, this book offers a coherent theoretical framework that explains the dynamism of right-wing populism in post-communist countries by drawing from the literature on Western Europe and by demonstrating parallels in party system dynamics across Europe. My book merges the studies of left-wing and populist right parties to demonstrate that the decay of the left and the rise of the populist right are indeed interconnected. Existing scholarship has tended to explore these two phenomena separately, but this book demonstrates that specific policy choices made by parties on the left created opportunities for right-wing populist parties to appeal to the socioeconomic groups that had previously supported the left. First, I argue that the embrace of pro-market policies and the implementation of painful and unpopular reforms contributed to the electoral demise of left-wing parties in the region. At the time of implementation, these programmatic transformations seemed like the only way for left-wing parties to sway the democratic electorate after losing the support of communist-era patronage networks and the influence of populist leaders. Instead, they ended up containing the seeds for the decay of these parties. By accepting and promoting pro-market, neoliberal policies at the beginning of the transition, leftist parties gradually pushed away their traditional electorates. By embracing reforms, the ex-communist left ended up discrediting themselves in the eyes of the very constituencies whose interests they had pledged to defend. Second, I argue that the populist parties on the right turned out to be unlikely beneficiaries of the left's policy miscalculations. In the aftermath of the EU accession, the reforms-induced frustration with the pro-market left created a political opening for populist parties. Former electorates of left parties, at that point apathetic, frustrated, or abstaining from voting for the left, became available for mobilization by right-wing parties. These parties appealed to the economically vulnerable voters from working-class backgrounds who had made up the bulk of the left's electorate. They did so by adopting traditionally left-wing positions on economic issues while maintaining their nativist stances on cultural issues. As a result of this dynamic, the pro-market successor leftist parties lost substantive swaths of their core electorates, who were disappointed by the left's inability to represent their interests. My book traces these dynamics within the party systems of select post-communist countries. I demonstrate that the decline of the center-left and the rise of right-wing populism ultimately resulted from the same process: economically vulnerable voters shifting away from the left to embrace the populist right. While the availability of large swaths of former electorates of left parties, particularly working classes, created a precondition for the rise of populist parties, much depended on populists' own strategies. Populism and its rise across Europe remains a multi-causal phenomenon. Beyond economically redistributionist positions, populist parties also